Welcome. Reverend Shanti is in Sri Lanka for the next couple of weeks taking care of temple business. So we are doing the best we can without him. I'm going to start off with a little Zen humor before I introduce our speaker today. Question: how would you describe a new student of Zen Buddhism? Answer: a man who is at two with the universe. Okay, good. Our speaker today is Chandana, the Dharma teacher, and he's going to share in his talk how to find balance in change. Chandana.
Thank you. While you guys were meditating, did you experience change? In what form? Did the body feel comfortable at one point? And then maybe somewhat dis-ease, discomfort? How about the breath? Sometimes thoughts. Oh, those are biggie. Life is constantly introducing us with the unpredictable. Right when we think we got it all figured out, the way we like things to be, all of a sudden there's a curveball introduced into the equation, something that we did not care for much. I recently heard one of the great current contemporary jazz musicians, Mr. Herbie Hancock, and he was telling of an experience he had while he was in the same band touring with the great Miles Davis. And they were apparently in Stuttgart, Germany at the time. This is happening around the 60s. And every time they went on stage with Miles Davis, he was such a great musician and artist, revolutionary in music. So even though they had been playing with him for many, many years, and they were all top-notch musicians, world-class musicians, they would still feel the jitters. They would still feel like, oh, we got to make sure every note is perfect. Because Miles was known for his own unique perfectionist antics. So Herbie is playing, they're playing for half an hour, this and that, and then they're really jamming. Everything is perfect. It's going beautifully, flawlessly. And then for some reason, Herbie Hancock plays the wrong chord. This is on stage, live, everything is live. And immediately Herbie Hancock, does this. What did I do? And then, all hell's gonna break loose in his mind. And then, momentarily, Miles Davis just pauses. Ever so, brief of a moment, and then all of a sudden he changes the whole entire direction of his repertoire for that piece and starts playing according to the wrong note that was played. Wrong in the mind of Herbie Hancock. Miles Davis was just playing what was introduced to him at that instant in time, which was completely unrehearsed and totally off the books, as they say. And that was, according to Herbie Hancock, that was a life changer for him. And when I heard this story, I was just like, wow. To be able to, we have so many beautiful phrases in English language, like rolling with the punches, for example. And just going with the flow of things. How many of us can actually do what Miles did? At that peak moment of emotionality, at that moment of living experience when we have everything going according to what we had hoped them to be, and then all of a sudden something's there that was totally unexpected. Especially if it's something that was not to our liking in a sense. Change often, according to Buddhism and the living experience that we all have and share on this planet, equals oftentimes dukkha. Change is oftentimes synonymous with dukkha, dissatisfaction, suffering, not having things the way we want them to be. When you were meditating earlier, you were experiencing the breath coming in and out, in and out. If we can get a snippet of the changing nature of existence of our lives, we don't have to look at our pictures from 10 years ago, 5 months ago, or 5 days ago in order for us to see change. The practice of mindfulness brings into focus this one tiny little ambassador of change that is occurring constantly, that nobody can actually miss out on if we pay attention to the mindfully to the breath as it goes in and as it goes out. A very personal experience, individual experience. And then there are the big ones. Someone very close to you dying. Breaking up of a beautiful relationship. Breaking up of the body in front of your eyes. Those people who you have grown up with, slowly, turning decrepit and the muscles atrophying and your eyes not functioning so well, gray hair, aches and pains here and there. Who invited those? Where's ibuprofen? Change comes in the form of suffering. So long as there is a holding on to something that allows us to have this sense of identification with this persona that we call me, myself. This is who I am, who I function as, who the years have chiseled. This persona, this personality, my likes, my dislikes. Holding on and refusing to adjust to situations and circumstances that life presents us with. Most of us live close-fisted in life, disallowing, not wanting to have life take away from us what we've struggled for so long and really earned the right to hold on to these things because these are ours. This is my body. You know, when I train trainers, fitness trainers, and or when I've trained clients, it's interesting when they come in and they say, I want to lose 35 pounds in X amount of time. I say, okay. I want to get a six-pack. My rectus abdominis, I need it to be chiseled. I need to get the perfect body. I say, okay. So before I draw the program design for them, before I do the assessments and all that, I ask them a simple question. Why? Why do you need that? Well, because I'll fit better in my clothes. Okay, All right, fair enough. But why? Well, because, you know, when I walk, it makes me feel good, this and that. When I look at myself in the mirror, it makes me feel good. Okay. Why? So you see my point. There's a constant probing, digging, until we get to the crux of the matter, which is seeking that state of happiness, that state of contentment in what we have conjured up the idea of being, gaining this extra lean mass, for example, or shedding the fat, or whatever, or making that extra $100 million, or whatever. However, change comes and knocks on our door and says, excuse me, I'm here, in case you missed me, in case you thought that this is who you are. You know, when the Buddha, well, the Bodhisattva, before he became the Buddha, when he saw those, you know, it's somewhat legendary, the different scenes that he saw prior to his renunciation. When he saw old age, when he saw sickness, when he saw death at different intervals, as he was exploring life, he let go of 3 different prides in himself. The attachment to the holding on to the thing which tries to scream at the face of change. I have my health. This is my healthy body. I've gone to the gym 7 days a week. I watch my calories. I take, you know, 20 to 30% of my fat in my caloric intake. It's there. 60% comes from carbs. The remainder is from protein, and I get, I don't know, a gallon of water a day. So I should be good, and I got good genes, right? We have this pride fermenting within us. Meanwhile, life is slowly wrinkling up our skin, bags, knees hurting, etc., etc. And then he sees that at the prime of his youth. So he had to let go of that pride which was in him like it is within us. And then he saw old age. He saw how a human being that used to be in the prime of their life now is on the verge of this thing called death, which was his 3rd pride to be relinquished. I was recently at a funeral of a friend of mine, a person that I developed a very strong connection to, a person who became like my adopted mother. And I saw her, how her health diminished within a matter of 1.5 years, 2 years after she's gone to chemotherapy. I used to take her to chemo, and how she would feel completely debilitated every single session. At the end of every single session, she would not be herself, hate life. So you try to sneak in some Dharma, even edgewise if you can, especially because she wasn't a Buddhist. So you try to talk to her, and now after she passed, her own brothers and children. And it's amazing how people are resistant to the acceptance, to the idea of accepting change. And we hold on to these ideas that we have propagated through our lives, attaching to these positions and of life and stages that we've called, this is a station for me. now I have the right to be this thing. In order for a thing to be a thing, it needs to be fixed in time. It needs to not change. Even in quantum mechanics, we see that that's not the case. Everything is changing. Electrons moving almost at light speed. Particles are never, ever stable. They're always changing. You know, there was one dung beetle, and this lucky dung beetle, he came across a huge pile of dung. Guess what? Jackpot. Because for these guys, it's heaven, it's home, it's a community, it's wealth, it's food, it's house, it's a home. So what he did was he invited all his buddies. So it was so huge, they started living in it. They established a beautiful community. In fact, soon enough, he ran for office because they needed a leader, right? And he was on the podium, he was talking proudly, he was saying he wanted to make some changes and things needed to go back to the way he thought should be in that community. And soon enough, he was elected as the king of that community. Dung Kingdom. And a few days later, they feel this earthquake pulsating every once in a while. But it got bigger. The sound and the vibration and the reverberation of the ground. And then they popped their heads out of the kingdom of dung, and they saw this gigantic animal approaching. It was an elephant. The elephant was about to step, and then he saw all these beetles coming out, and they were very aggressive, they were very angry, and they started scolding the elephant. They said, "How dare you disrespect our king and our kingdom by lifting your foot off the ground, covering up, shading up the sun from our kingdom. You should be ashamed of yourself. If you keep this up, etc., we are going to come up with a revolt." And the elephant says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Did not mean to disrespect." And in a gesture of bowing, he lowers his foot down and crushes the whole entire kingdom along with its populations. Change. Out of nothing we make up things. Out of nothing we love to attach ourselves to things that we've striven to build out of ideas. The person that walked into this temple today is not the person sitting in this hall. In fact, we're changing constantly. Every 7 years or so, our whole entire cellular structures change. We have approximately anywhere from 100 to 300 trillion cells in us. They change constantly. However, what is required is the ability to have the sense of equanimity, which is the balance. And the Buddha presented us with so many wonderful tools. The ones that are really powerful, whether you're just a non-practicing Buddhist or a practicing meditating Buddhist. And these are called the Bojjhangas, or the 7 factors of awakening. The first of which is sati, which is mindfulness. If you just hold on to that, if you just hook yourself to that just first factor, inevitably it will lead you to the rest of it. Investigation, perseverance or energy, joy, the tranquility factor, the collectedness of mind, and finally, state of equanimity, which is the balance. Change is a powerful phenomenon. Let's not make, the mistake of just thinking that, yeah, if I understand it conceptually, it should take care of itself. If I apply these Buddhist ideas and techniques, it should be conquered. I should be able to hold myself strong and logically, reasonably be able to understand. And that would be the end of my connection to change. However, time and time again, we see that that is never going to work. Because change is going to come and pull the rug from underneath us. Right when we think we got it settled, we got it made. It's a constant practice, not a constant struggle. It's all about our interpretation of things, if you've noticed, in life. And happiness is such a choice. So is willing to maintain this sense of balance in the face of difficulties, in the face of changes. Now, there were many people crying at that funeral I had just mentioned. Just like there are moments when we miss someone dear to us who's gone. A beautiful relationship that is no more. A body that is no more the same. And it's never going to come back. The deliberate, intentional choice of wanting to have things be held on to creates this push and pull, this agitated state of mind. Because what we tend to do in those moments is basically holding on to the past, try to capture something ephemeral, something so foggy and misty and so non-real, in the form of memories, how they felt through associations. Oh, but do you remember how that felt? Oh, do you remember how it tasted? Oh, do you remember when we did this? Oh, do you remember? This is all the internal dialogue. When we're living smack dab in the center of the current present moment where those things do not apply anymore. So we're moving forward in time, yet we are holding on to the past. When there's this tremendous opportunity to learn about detachment, about change itself. So in essence, change, even though by so many people it's considered to be dukkha, it also is a tremendous opportunity for growth, to understand. Change is, in other words, impermanence. Impermanence is anicca, which is the first of the three declarations of the Buddha about nature. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. The third one is non-substantiality, or non-self, meaning not holding on to what my version of my understanding as to who this entity is continuously. There is no such thing, the Buddha said. For 45 years he repeated that in so many ways. Yet we still hold on to this concept of me, myself, mine. Holding on to that makes sure that this is never experienced. You know, we've heard this again and again. The past is dead, the future is not even born yet. All you have is the gift of this now, the present, right? It's a present. How many of us are aware of this, however? So my encouragement for you would be to look at the process of change as an alchemy, as a transformation of how we can turn this living experience into something that is truly magical, real. You can only taste a bite of an apple in the present moment. The moment you start thinking, oh yeah, remember when I was 7, when I was eating that apple back in the old country, or you know, when we were in Tuscany, I ate that apple. It was beautiful. It was tasty. It was delicious. It was so sweet, maybe a little bit sour. Meanwhile, you have the apple from now you're biting into. You're not tasting the juiciness of it. So when you're biting into the apple of now, just have the audacity, the patience, the tolerance, the compassion to be allowing the current experience to unfold in the form of change, and transform your living experience into something that is meaningful, that can only happen once in the series of once-in-a-lifetime moments, which is, in other words, your life, our lives, without cementing our feet. So, I think we're... Any questions? Yes, Russell?
I can kind of understand, but a lot of times, like in your one's work, you need to, they say, like for instance, if you're working in civil rights or something, then you say, well, we need to remember Martin Luther King,
Yes.
or Malcolm X, and or Gandhi, and we need to know, you know, we need to not just honor that memory, but we need to, you know, we need to have a sense of history in order to move forward and so forth. And you know, we also need to look at these images, look at this documentary, learn the lessons, this and that. So you do become, I mean, it's almost impossible to live entirely in the present, I mean, in a practical basis, because, well, at least for me, I have to rely on the past to propel me more into the present. I can't just, it's not a blank piece of paper. So how do you...
Is it?
Yeah. I don't know, but how do you do without the, well, yeah, is there a difference between sort of recognizing the past but not being attached? And then, you know, I was wondering.
Interesting.
I was wondering because in theory it sounds good, but we all rely on you know, on a certain amount of history, whether it's personal history, collective history,
Of course.
to live. Even in the where all the people have died, all the photos in the next room.
Yes.
I mean, people do, you know, recognize their existence and so forth, even though they may not be obsessed or attached, but still, then why bother to have these photos, even if it doesn't matter? You know?
I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate your position. And the thing, however, that we need to make a distinction with is not ignoring, not denying the importance of the past. Of course, I mentioned several times the Buddha and his own ordeals in understanding and coming up with the Dhamma, experiencing Nibbana. So one needs to be cautious not to be so categorical in the sense that they ignore what Malcolm X stood for, or Martin Luther King, using your examples. However, you need to also acknowledge the fact that Martin Luther King lived Martin Luther King's life. Malcolm X lived Malcolm X's life the way he saw it fit, as best as they could, given the information and knowledge and experience that they had at that time and place. We are here. We have the wealth of having had Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and countless other individuals and teachers. Oftentimes we use them, however, at our own detriment. What do I mean by that? We use them as crutches. Crutches to rely on, to put our own responsibilities upon their shoulders. They've lived their lives. They've made an impact in the face of history, on the pages of history. They were presented with a blank sheet of paper, theirs, which they filled up as best as they could. Now you and I have our own unique sheets of paper, I'm using your metaphor, analogy.
Well, some of us might just have a post-it, that's how not a big piece.
It's all relative. Remember the dung beetle?
Yeah.
For an ant, that is an entire continent. So we need to be a little bit more aware and cautious as to how we look at the past and history. And oftentimes we use them as ideals to such a point where we forget that we are living in this time and place. And again, it takes us away from the responsibility of living with audacity to really face our own situations in our lives. One of the easiest and cowardly ways of living is just looking at the past or looking at the future and just living for the sake of those. And this is my understanding, of course. One of the hardest things that I found to do in life is to be in the moment. And one of the best examples of that is to sit and meditate, to go out, walk, do your things, be active, however, bringing that mindfulness with you. How many of us can actually do that? And that is the challenge that the Buddha presented us with. Living fully. We in the West have this idea of living fully. What do we mean by that? You know, depending on what age you belong to. If you're a teenager, an adolescent, or early 20s, etc., going to Coachella, listening to 40 different bands within a matter of 3 days, spending $600 and getting drunk is possibly, to some of people who live in that age group, might be it. Living fully. Does it have to be so? So, living fully has so many ramifications, but I'm inviting you guys to come in and look at it through the eyes of mindfulness and bringing investigation into your processing of this information that is called change. And then bringing the resilience and perseverance and energy to maintain that investigative mindfulness. All of a sudden it takes us to this pedestal, this way station of just experience of, I'm getting this now. And that is a state of joy. And when you have that sense of joy, it is followed immediately by the sense of tranquility. When you have that tranquility, your mind is so focused, but at the same time it's so open, like a ball, a soccer ball in the middle of a grassy field with nobody around. It's perfectly open, completely present, completely collected. And when we have that, everything just falls into place and we have this sense of incredible equanimity and balance. And those are the 7 factors of enlightenment. So every breath we take gives us the opportunity to experience what the Buddha was talking about in the face of changes that are occurring in our lives. So I hope that...
Good.
Yes, thank you.
We're going to